So my project is based on mental health and trying to find a physical object to really help someone feel comfortable instead of using medication to find a remedy for someone. So the fabric of using embellishment to find something cosy and warm, to feel something.
So my project is about the forest and death and rebirth and decay. So I used makeup wipes that had dyed green, and I sewed them all together, and then I embroidered and did a bit of needle felting on it to give it this moss texture to look like it's growing.
My project surrounds ugly beauty and how we as society are pressured by the media to follow certain beauty standards which are often unrealistic. My shoots almost make a mockery of these standards and show a different side of beauty that is unconventional to society.
What if Mary Quant met Frida Kahlo, and I imagined Frida Kahlo walked into Mary Quant's shop and tried on all of the bags as trousers and mini skirts over her long skirts to see how it would change.
I really enjoyed making a collection of garments inspired by experiences with my friends and beauty standards. I'm really happy with my outcomes and can really see my friends wearing them when we're doing the things we love. I made them by pattern cutting the trousers and then screen printing and heat pressing over them and then sewing them all together.
I wanted to reinvent the brand with different aesthetics that I liked. So I chose punk aesthetic for this character to promote this vanilla chai flavour of tea. I chose this set design to promote this kind of tea. Each one is actually a still from the video, and I created the set design myself as well.
So it's all clothes that I either had or bought in charity shops that I re-put together in different ways to create something new. And I tried hand sewing and different techniques, like the crossing one and the straight stitching. This one has gold clips as well to show the repair.
No matter who you are and where you're from kind of thing, you should feel confident in who you are. The main thing about it was the fact I did think stereotypically is something that affects our generation massively more than any others because of social media.
So I used a mix of from like cotton, faux leathers. I used kind of high-vis coat material and like kind of I guess fake like animal materials a bit, or like these kind of very synthetic materials, quite a mixed variation. Doing some heat press, some stenciling. I did some stuff where I taped things off and used paint. I did things where I freehanded with pen. I kind of went around, like made variations, like different prints, doing different methods and stuff.
I got inspiration from the Salem Witch Trials, but also from Harry Potter. And I've tried to incorporate herbology. So I have a giant leaf with the stem and the leaves with the wire, because I thought that looked quite cool and added some detail.
My project is about cleaning, and I wanted to make cleaning a fashionable and appeal to people from ages 13 to 24 and encourage them to clean too.
My project is based around my hometown of Whitstable, where I focus on the two aspects, more Whitstable town and Whitstable Harbour, more the industrial side of things. This print is inspired by Whitstable Beach, using the shells that I took from observational drawings made for my style. And I took my colour palette from shops and anything that I thought was more based around Whitstable, and I heat pressed on these with abstract shapes.
So my project is looking at the farming industry and wool and the misconception around its sustainability. So how people will buy into fast fashion but think using wool that's ethically sourced is unsustainable.
My project is about fly tipping, and I've made these prints inspired by fly tipping near my house. And I've incorporated reused materials such as these denim pieces from old denim jeans.
I took inspiration from the movements within feminism and throughout history. So I started off with the suffragettes and worked my way through like as a timeline kind of thing. The dye work was kind of inspired by how like expressive it is and kind of getting some kind of anger out on that.
My project is based on my mum's and my nan's fashion when they were my age. So I'm using this Instagram page to bring together the generations. So I really love this image because it's a shoot that I did inspired by the 90s, layered over an image of my mum from the 90s.
For my project I did a magazine on sneaker culture and sneaker history. So these are a few images of my magazine talking about the history of like famous models like Jordan 1, did some like editorial pics and did some interviews talking about sneaker culture, sneaker community, how people collect shoes and keep them in good condition and stuff.
My project's about my personal happiness. I wanted to make some work for sort of a festival, some festival wear. So I worked with some embroidery and applique. I also worked with some screen printing for bags that are inspired by my happiness. I made a hat to go with the outfit and also a poster.
So here I've got some gloves influenced by Supreme's The Fan as well, almost as sort of toppers with it. I've got the high neck for Mick Jagger and like the hot pink as well, and also the wide leg with the low V at the front and back. And it's kind of a mixture of the Supremes and Mick Jagger kind of together.
My project is about folkwear and workwear, so I combine them roughly and poofy elements with more functional aspects like big pockets. And so I go with kind of very big silhouettes and stuff.
Based on generational fashion, I have made this jacket with these massive shoulder pads and very over-exaggerated sleeves, and I've paired it with a circle skirt with this really nice stained glass pattern to try and sort of blend the elements of both the 80s and the 50s.
Visualising sound and songs into patterns and print, and I've been printing onto nightwear clothes using heat transfer, screen print and embroidery.
So for my final piece, I decided to base it on the character of Van Helsing, and I was inspired by the steampunk kind of fashion movement because I thought it fitted his character, being quite like technical and being a doctor and stuff like that. I thought it meant I could include lots of like small details like watches and keys and stuff because it was kind of relevant to his character.
For my project, I've made a pair of trousers, a tank top and bucket hat inspired by childhood imagery as well as images that I've made for this project. I thought it was an interesting starting point, especially as how huge Y2K fashion currently is, and that was my childhood and my early influences.
It was really fun because I worked with loads of people and styling them all in a way that they wouldn't go outside but they would wear inside, because nobody's dressed up through lockdown. It's all about a timeline of the dates of lockdown and things that we've been allowed to do, so going out, not going out, picnics, in the studio, and everybody's wearing something crazy.
So for my final I made like, at the moment you can see 3, but I made 5 different lampshades, from screen printing, weaving, to sculpture making, and I used like my own prints and my own designs and natural dyes as well, which is this one right here, bleaching.
The final garment is inspired by the film The Royal Tenenbaums. The shape is something that comes just from these individual parts, which are hands. There's a really pivotal scene where hands are really important, and I allowed them to just take their own form and shape the garment for me instead of trying to force them into a certain shape.
All of the big cat motifs that you can see, the tigers and the lions and the jaguars, they're all individual cats that are actually at the sanctuary, and I researched all of them and I know all of their names and all about them, and I really wanted to show their fun personalities and celebrate just how beautiful they are.
My project is based on Walmer Castle, which is in Deal. I absolutely love Walmer Castle and I wanted the textiles to reflect the fun and fantastic history of the place. I have a picnic tablecloth, I have a selection of masks, which this is only one, and I have a selection of plates, which I embroidered originally and then transferred onto porcelain.
What inspired my final project was retrofuturism. I made a selection of garments that I modelled and pattern cut and printed onto. I love how there is bold colour mixed with black print, and I screen printed and heat pressed onto these.
I wanted to create a magazine that combined the support and information that mental health organisations provided, but with the aesthetics of fashion to appeal to young people.
For my final major project, I went with the idea of the collaborations between luxury and household brands and advertising campaigns to go towards that. So here I printed on some B&Q buckets to sort of do them in Hermes style, and then here I made redesigned Kellogg's packaging in a Chanel way.
I made a magazine, and it's about being different and how it's normal to encourage younger students in school to be creative.
I did French chateaus and I modernised some of the garments. So I've made a dress, a structural skirt to go underneath, another overlay, and a corset that has a chemise underneath.
For my project, I was really inspired by airports and air hostesses, so I used a lot of luxurious items, but also a lot of travel pillows and a lot of patterns and colours.
I explored femininity and masculinity in men's style, and I uploaded them up to Instagram, TikTok, and I'm also creating a website just to sort of explore the relationship between personality and clothing, and whether if you're a feminine person, does that reflect in your style? Or if you're a masculine person, can you wear feminine clothes?
So my final project was inspired by Fleetwood Mac's album Rumours. I experimented with different heat press techniques and different applique techniques as well. And for my final collection, I did a 3-piece denim set inspired by Gold Dust Woman, and these 2 pieces were inspired by You Make Loving Fun.
My theme is abstract expressionism, so I've looked at the techniques they use where they did big brush strokes, and I've sort of created my own version in sewing. So I've did abstract fabric manipulation and abstract sewing, and this is my painting basically.
I've used quite a few of my own stamps that I made that reflect the woodland and different objects in the woodland, but also creating symbols that I feel are quite inspired by spirituality. Also hand embroidery and machine embroidery as well, just to kind of create really nice details.
So 1890s prison fashion and 80s club kid culture from London were my main inspirations for this project, and I created a final garment that had the 1890s frills, sort of smaller details aspect, as well as the recycled use of clothing in the club kid era.
I was inspired by my mum's company and using their seconds. I made a suit, and I also made a little satchel bag. I was inspired by streetwear and oversized things. That's why I wanted to make a massive blazer, but also be able to cinch in the waist with a bag.
So I decided to reimagine a clothing company brand that was struggling to remain relevant, and for that I created a website, an Instagram social media page, new packaging that would be sustainable, as well as a home and display page for the products.
So I did a small magazine that goes inside of a bigger magazine, showing all my mum's old clothes and how the difference on how I style it and how she styled them. So just comparing them between different generations and having an interview throughout it, basically, and how she loves them and still loves them and why she kept them.
Marilyn Monroe and Bridgerton were 2 very iconic and inspiring things for my costume, really emphasising the body figure, cinching the waist in and making a bustle for it as well.
For my final major project, I decided to create a magazine that aimed at restyling clothes rather than purchasing. I was inspired by, in lockdown, I noticed how many clothes I bought myself, and that wasn't really necessary, so I wanted to look at how to restyle them.